Hi, Gabriel. Today on the Vegan Pulse, we're joined by someone who brings heart, creativity, and a whole lot of plant-based powered passion to everything he does. Gabriel Gaarden, who has been inspiring people through his work, his voice, and his commitment to living with conviction. Hi, Gabriel.
Hey, Nancy, thanks for that great intro. Nice to see you. How's everything going?
Everything is going very well. Thank you so very much for asking. Now, we're going to do a little something different today. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is this. If you had to describe your personality as a vegetable, which one would it be and why?
Wow. I wish I were more decisive because having to do this without prep ahead of time, I won't take long. But let me just think of some of the vegetables I like to eat, and then I might find my personality in one of them. Um, oh, that's a good question. Darn.
Oh.
Something that's drought tolerant because we're in New Mexico. Yeah, I'll just go with one of the humble beans. We have the Three Sisters that have been grown here for millennia in southwestern United States in this part of the world. And beans are a wonderful source of protein, a wonderful source of fiber, and many other beneficial nutrients that are kind of a cornerstone, in my opinion, and this is backed by science, of any plant-based diet, right? And even if people aren't on a plant-based diet, they should be eating loads of beans because if you do, they're going to improve your health. If you don't, it's a detriment to your health. And so, and then I'll pick one of our native beans would be, of course, the pinto bean is a very New Mexican bean, but it's very, very common. And then you have some of the other forms of native beans like the tepary bean grown for, again, millennia, thousands of years here in this part of the world, by our not my direct ancestors, at least anytime recent, but our Native American ancestors here to this region who've been here for thousands of years, long before European colonialist settlement, etc., colonialist takeover and genocide and everything that came with it. And so the tepary bean, I think I'd pick just because it's humble, it's healthy, it's been around for a long time, and of course, we're a bean people here in New Mexico, and it's a blessing that we are because it makes it a little bit easier for New Mexicans to approach eating that healthy, powerful, wonderful food that fills us with long-term energy and helps lower our risk for chronic disease, improve our blood sugar control, and help us feel strong and healthy every day, especially if we're on a plant-based diet. It's just one of those cornerstones of a plant-based diet. So I will go with the bean, and then in particular, I'd pick the tepary bean, even though I personally don't eat them often, just because they're not as common. I eat a lot of canned beans because I eat beans every single day of my life, and I don't always cook them from dry. And so I tend to rely on the stuff that's easy to get in a can, which is pinto, black, Great Northern, kidney, garbanzo. Those are my staples. And then I cook lentils more often than beans, just because lentils are in the same overall kind of category as beans. They're all legumes, right? So you've got your lentils, your split peas, and all the different kinds of beans, all under the legume category, all wonderfully beneficial for our health, all incredibly delicious when prepared with different herbs and spices to flavor them. And so I'll cook lentils from scratch more often: green lentils, brown lentils, red lentils, sunrise lentils. And I encourage people to branch out, right? If you're going to eat beans or lentils, try all the different colors, because every different color and shape and size brings with it its own wonderful cornucopia kind of spectrum of different nutrients. And they're all going to impact our health in beautiful ways, beneficial ways.
Okay. I was going to go with the mighty potato, but I could be the garbanzo bean because I love garbanzos.
Yes, both are wonderful. I just had
Uh,
a sweet potato for lunch with beans, sweet potato and kidney beans for lunch. So I got both the potato and the root vegetable and the bean. And then I also had roasted fingerling potatoes yesterday with cabbage and Great Northern beans. Beautiful lunch.
okay. And name the three sisters.
Corn, beans, and squash.
Thank you very much. Now, okay, shifting gears slowly, like a turtle doing yoga. Let's see. What about, let's ask you this little fun question. Uh, if What's a vegan dish that you could eat every day and never get tired of? And we already heard that you eat beans every day, so something else.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I was gonna say rice and beans.
Hmm.
Could say three sisters, corn, beans, and squash. There's a reason that our ancestral people here in this part of the world in the Southwest, the indigenous folks, the First Nations people, have been eating corn, beans, and squash for thousands of years. Um, but in addition to that, I mean, what do I return to? I'm trying to think, I eat Lara bars almost every single day just because it's a great way for me as an athlete who does a lot of strength training and a lot of endurance training. I'm a trail runner. I'm a mountain bike rider. I love to go up big mountains like 14,000 foot peaks all the time in Colorado and all the mountains here in New Mexico. I'm always in the mountains. So I burn a lot of calories, a lot of energy, and I eat a lot. Um, and so Lara bars are really good. I just recently found these. I've got no relation to any company I ever espouse on the podcast, but I eat a lot of Lara bars just because they're a quick and convenient way to get calories, right? And they're predominantly whole food. This one is their chocolate truffle flavor. It's got a little chocolate in it, very simple, just cocoa butter, a couple of other cacao, like the cacao bean, with a little bit of sugar. But otherwise, it's just basically dates and nuts and other forms of dried fruits that are in Lara bars. So they're predominantly whole food. That's the only reason I eat them is because they're healthy. I don't eat other bars that are chock full of, random ingredients that aren't very natural and aren't very whole. But I just recently found these. They're a little bit more expensive, but it's called Thunderbird. I think they're out of like
Oh,
Austin, Texas. Another basically whole food plant based. I don't think they add sugar to any of these. And this is a cool flavor: pecan, goji, pistachio, and dates, pecans, almonds, pistachios, goji berries, golden berries, and Himalayan, and a little bit of Himalayan pink salt. So just they've got a kind of a more unique variety of ingredients. Like you hear the goji berries and the golden berries, which you never really find those in Lara bars. The ingredients are more common in Lara bars. So anyway, these are fun. 250 calories in one bar. So just a convenient way for me to get some extra nutrients because otherwise I'm having to eat a lot of potatoes and beans and rice, these foods that are a little bit lower in calorie density, something I talk about often. And if you need to lose weight, which many Americans, would like to lose weight so they can carry around fewer pounds and be lighter on their feet and have, lower risk for different forms of chronic disease as well as osteoporosis that you can get because you're just doing all the wear and tear on your joints and your bones all the time and the other forms of connective tissues that hold it all together. A lot of people want to lose weight in our country because access to hyper processed food, access to animal products that are laden with calories and saturated fat, make it really easy to gain a lot of weight. And generally speaking, that's one of the other wonderful benefits of being on a plant-based or vegan diet is it's a lot easier to lose weight because plants are naturally dilute in calories. They have fewer calories. Their calorie density is lower. And so it makes it easier to lose weight and you kind of live with a lighter body, reach your ideal or at least close to ideal body weight. But if you're a really active person or you're an underweight vegan, some vegans are really skinny. You want to eat extra calories. Stuff like this is good for that. And of course, you don't have to buy something made by a company. You could if you have a food processor at home, you can grind up dates and nuts and seeds and other forms of dried fruits. Make your own bars. I do them all the time. I usually make them into balls at home because bars, you'd have to like press it into a baking sheet. You'd have to cut them out, totally doable. I'll just throw it in a food processor, grind it all up, and then I'll just roll it into a ball. I call it like a date ball. And I'll throw dried cherries in there, a little bit of vanilla extract, dates, cashews, dried, undried, unsweetened coconut. You throw all those things together. You can roll it in cacao, give it a chocolate out, a little chocolatey service cacao powder. You could roll it in a few chocolate chips to make it extra decadent, right? Some chocolate chips to make it more of a chocolatey dessert. Make your own homemade version of something like this. But it's good to have things like this on hand because they make getting some healthy calories easy. Sometimes when you're like, oh, I'm out and about and I'm hungry and I just want to run to McDonald's or Burger King or Taco Bell or KFC or what's one of the other ones? Long John Silver's, right? Some of these common places that, of course, are terrible for our health. I just have to call that out. Nobody should be shamed for eating those foods because people are in different situations and I've never walked a day in their shoes, so I can't judge them for their dietary choices. But I can guarantee you those foods aren't supporting our health. They're not supporting the overall sustainability of our environment, which right now is in shambles if anybody's paying attention with climate change and other environmental degradation. And of course, the number one or one of the highest contributors to acidification of our waterways, the erosion of our soil, the degradation of our soil, which of course we need to grow food, the consumption of, by far and away, most of our farmland across the world is growing food to feed livestock, and then of course feeding and growing the livestock themselves. It's all animal agriculture. And of course, those fast food companies that I was naming off are some of the key purchasers. They're some of the key buyers for the animal products, right? That people are eating. It's literally ruining our world, ruining our environment. We need to reach for plants more often. And foods like this make it more convenient to tie it all together. If you need some vegan convenience foods, so that, if I get an extra 250 calories from something yummy like this, that's healthy and it's plant-based, then I'm less likely to need to go to McDonald's and eat all that crap that's bad for me. It's bad for the planet, and it's bad for all the animals that we, of course, are just creating unfathomable amounts of suffering in our world through industrial animal agriculture. And we can avoid all that by eating plants and reaching for simple snacks like this so that we don't fall into the pleasure trap, folks, and need to go eat fast food all the time. Stop doing it. You deserve better. There's my little soapbox.
Yes. Everyone deserves better than what you've been taught. So you need to eat healthier. Those bars are great. Like if you're going to be running around and you don't know when you're going to have, or if you're going on a trip, on the plane or whatever, and you pack a couple of those in to keep you, in check in case you need one before you get to, eat a regular meal. Those are awesome to just have around and, and then use them. Eat them.
Yeah, so no excuses, right? We've all come up with excuses in our lives, whether it's for the things that we eat or other things that we do, right? Human beings are really good at making up excuses. But it's like, stop making excuses for your health. Stop making excuses for choices that we all make that are ruining our environment and that are literally just causing countless suffering across the globe, countless suffering of sentient beings. Just stop doing it. The choice is easy. Eat plants, eat convenient vegan snacks like this. You'll feel better emotionally. You'll feel better physically. So every part, therefore, it's a waterfall. It's a cascade kind of effect, right? Once you start making these simple changes to improve your own personal health and to improve the world around you, and then you feel better emotionally, and then it snowballs. Then you feel a little better emotionally and physically, and then it reinforces itself. It's a positive feedback loop, and you just want to keep doing it again and again over time. And then once you do it more and more, you get the track record, you get the confidence to continue to do it over time rather than saying, oh, well, I've been doing this darn vegan thing for a month or two now, and it's just, I just can't stand. I miss the Big Mac, and I miss the Whopper, man, and I miss the Hush Puppies at Long John Silver's. And it's like, no, you don't have to go there anymore. When you do this long enough, you just got to give yourself a little bit of time, right? Here's my apple, right? This is your registered dietitian in house, everybody. Nancy's the same way, but I'm an RD for anybody that doesn't know. I became a registered dietitian so I wouldn't just speak to this as an activist or an advocate or somebody who's really passionate, who's done a lot of reading, and I've done all those things, but I'm also a health professional. I went through the formalized education process so that I could become an RD, so I can say all this from an educated, evidence-based perspective. And then I walk the walk, right? Here are my black beans, right? Just pop open a can. So I'm not, again, making an excuse to go to McDonald's or to go to Subway or during the day. I just go, boom, buy a bunch of canned beans. I open them up. I'm at work right now, right? We're doing this podcast at the end of a work day. My black beans, my apple. Here are some diced fire roasted tomatoes, right? Here is, just this is just the food that I have around. These are all my bars, right? This is just a box full of Lara bars and a box full of these Thunderbird bars in different flavors so that I've got my foods ready to go. So it's like, oh yeah, I'm busy with my work day. And I just know this because I can speak from a human perspective. I work with people. I work in a giant building here for the New Mexico Department of Health, right? I'm not representing New Mexico Department of Health on this podcast. This is something personal just between Nancy and I, but this is just happens to be where I work. I work in public health. And I work with people who are going to McDonald's and Long John Silver's and Subway. And again, no judgment on those folks. I haven't walked a day in their shoes in my life. And so I have no idea what they're dealing with socially, emotionally, physically, what stress they're dealing with, right? I don't know anything about their life. But I work at the Department of Health and I see people who go to Sonic and all these other places for lunch every day, right? I know I'm a registered dietitian, right? I live this stuff. I've studied this stuff. I know how what we eat relates to our risk for chronic disease in terms of our own personal health. And they could be making these same decisions every day, but they're caught in the pleasure trap, right? They think, oh, I've been working hard all day, and so I deserve my trip to Sonic so I can get that big freaking drink, right? That's just full of sugar and artificial ingredients, instead of just reaching for these whole natural foods, right? It's hard to get out of the pleasure trap. But at some point, people need to decide, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so I'm willing to start making some changes. And then the other thing I did for lunch, right? I cooked a sweet potato for lunch, right? I cut it up. Just going to show everybody because it's like people need to know this stuff, right, Nancy? They need to know that they can show up at work.
Yeah.
I was busy with my girlfriend all weekend, and so I did not have time to meal prep because some people say, oh, well, I'd love to eat healthy like you, Gabe. I'd love to do it, but I'm too damn busy and I'm too damn stressed. And I've got the wife and the kids and then this and that and another. And I've got my mom to take care of. And it's like, yeah, we can make excuses all day, right, for not making changes to our health. Or we can just decide today, we can decide right now that our health is worth making those changes. And so we're just going to step up and start doing something, right? And it can be small. Just start by eating oatmeal for breakfast instead of eating McDonald's for breakfast and just do that, right? You don't have to change lunch. You don't have to change dinner. Just change one meal. I got a knife here. I've got a cutting board here. I took a sweet potato for lunch. I didn't have time to roast it on the weekend. I didn't have time to steam it or to do this or that, or do something fancy with it, make hash browns out of it. I cut it up. I've got a microwave. I threw it in a bowl. I know I've got the background thing on, so this isn't, I just diced it up. I've got these things right at work. So everybody should do this. No excuses for not eating healthy. No excuses for not eating plant-based, people. Cut it up, throw it in a bowl. And then I steam it at work in a microwave. Don't be afraid of microwaves. The studies have been done. They don't nucleate or whatever people are worried about. They don't nuke your food. They just cause vibrations among the hydrogen atoms, it's the water molecules, the H2O molecules. And as those vibrations happen in the water molecules, they vibrate faster and faster. They kind of turn and they cause the food to heat up. It's literally just interacting with water molecules in your food, people. I know most people aren't afraid of microwaves, but there's some people that are. So it's like, oh, I can't cook a sweet potato at work because I only have access to a microwave or I don't have an oven. No, just be quiet and cook a sweet potato at work in the microwave because it's wonderful for your health. And actually microwaving food, the nutrient retention has been studied. Again, it's been studied and published in peer-reviewed journals. The microwave, you have higher nutrient content in microwaving compared to many other forms of cooking, including roasting your sweet potatoes and all these other things, right? Ways that people love to eat potatoes. Microwaving, more nutrients. I put a little top on it. If you want to make sure the sweet potato doesn't dry out, you can just put like 1 or 2 tablespoons of water. Just throw it in the bowl. I put this on top so that it steams. And then I heat it up for like 5 or 6 minutes. Boom. Cooked sweet potato at work. No excuses. And then I've got the canned beans that I just open, drain them, rinse them, whatever you want to do with them, right? I throw some fire roasted tomatoes on there just because the fire roasting, you get that extra flavor, that extra umami, but it doesn't matter what kind of tomatoes you use. I've got a can of some 505 green chili in their little tiny refrigerator that we have here at work so we can have a few things, in there. And that's it. Boom. Our New Mexican favorites, right? Some tomatoes, some beans, and some potatoes. And then I throw a little green chili on there for flavor. Often I'll bring like an avocado with me from home because who doesn't love rice and beans or potatoes and beans and avocado and green chili? It's like if you don't love that stuff, there's something wrong with you. No offense. I just say that to be funny, but really there's something wrong with you if you don't love those foods. And these are some of the healthiest foods that we can eat. And we can prepare them right at work. So
So
that
is there,
again, it's my responsibility to be a living example, right? And so it's like even when I'm busy, even when I'm traveling, even when I'm away from work, or I'm away from home and I don't do any meal prep on the weekend, I can just quickly chop a sweet potato, pop open a can of beans, some green chili, an avocado, and some fire roasted tomatoes, and I've got lunch. And I never, ever, ever have an excuse for poisoning my body with animal products and fast food crap, right? Calorie rich and processed food crap. And of course, I feel good every day because of it. And that's why I keep doing it, right? I never want to go back to feeling terrible and having low energy and not sleeping well and all the other things that happen to all the Americans that are eating the kinds of foods that don't support their health. We
right,
can get out of that trap, people. And one of the best ways to do that is you have to start with what you put in your mouth. And what you put in your mouth should be forms of minimally processed plants. That's what we were supposed to eat.
right. And the other thing, these are like good quick tips. Like I also have, I think it's Minute Maid that has those little microwavable rice cups, and
Yeah.
they have quinoa, they have wild rice, as long as they don't have any animal products, that a can of beans, like you said, an avocado, and if you like jackfruit, you open up a can of jackfruit, and you can eat. You just gotta be prepared. And actually, I am going to concur with you what you said earlier, that you know it's only hard when you think about making a change, but it's not just veganism. It's anytime a human is going to make a change, their mind goes a little crazy because it's like, oh, it's something new. So it's the same thing with going onto a whole food plant-based diet, vegan diet. And at first you might be a little scared because it's new, like anything else. But once you learn and you get tips, that's why we're here, to give out information, to help you, the viewers, people who are out there, to learn more of the things that go into being vegan and how easy it could be, and that lots of people are doing it. And and especially nowadays with the government closing down all those health checks for the animal agriculture, suspending some of those, you know I myself, I would fear that it could be your last meal, because it could be. They have all those recalls on the animal flesh and stuff like that. And as you were talking before about animal agriculture and being so detrimental to our planet, to our health, to the animals, and we keep forgetting that we're all connected. We really are all family across the universe, because what happens to one of us happens to another. If we remember, China got COVID, and then everybody was thinking, oh, it's just China. And then within, quickly, the whole world was affected. So we're all interconnected. And so if we harm one, we harm the other. And I think it's just that we need to step away from that animal agriculture, because the only people who continue to move this forward are those people who are exploiting the animals to get rich. They don't care about your health. They don't care that you might get diabetes, cancer, or you have an increased chance of getting those diseases by buying their product, because all they care is about lining their pocket. They don't care that they're destroying the world, the planet, the soil, the air, the water. They're destroying all of that. And when we keep supporting that, it's like it blows your mind. They're killing the planet, they're killing us, they're killing the animals, and we still support them.
Yeah, it's we face some pretty stark realities in our world. But all we can do, I think, is number one, do our best to be living examples, to be lighthouses for the people around us in our communities, in our families, friends, workplaces, and greater communities. And then, you know, volunteer, put our money to, give our money to companies that are doing right by by food, by animals, by the environment, etc. And and then just continue to do our best to advocate for policies that will help all of those, that will help human health, that will help the animal, that will help the health of all the beings around us, including livestock and livestock and wildlife. I mean, think about all the harms that we do to wildlife because of industrial animal agriculture primarily, but other things, for deforestation and all the other things we do that ruin wildlife habitats around the world. The overfishing that we do of the oceans, right? I mean, negative human impacts basically pervade every aspect of our environment that we can even think of. We could just list them on and on and on and on and on.
And
So
the other thing is that, when something happens, it's going to happen and it's going to be too late, and people are going to be saying, oh, if I only knew. Well, we're telling you.
yeah, we humans, we're it's such a double-edged sword. Look at all we've done. We've created the kind of technology that you and I can talk, instantaneously. You're in Albuquerque, I'm in Santa Fe. We're able to talk on these fancy computer screens and have these great conversations, being in different cities, being across the world, in different continents. Even we can do these kinds of things. We can create all this wild stuff, and yet simultaneously we can do all this terror. We just inflict terror upon the globe and upon other living beings.
Well, let's squeeze a little extra zest into this conversation and head a new direction because we're about to come to a conclusion. So, is there a vegan ingredient that you think deserves way more hype than it gets?
Oh, good question. What ingredients have I been using lately? I like many people. I don't know how other people are with their nutrition routines. I kind of do things in waves, right? I recently, or a couple years ago, I found this company Banza, who makes pasta. It's gluten-free products. Who makes gluten-free pasta? They make gluten-free pizza crust. But it wasn't until I happened upon Whole Foods, because I shop at Sprouts, or I shop at La Montanita Co-op, or I shop at Natural Grocers. And I go to a lot of different stores, one, because I'm just blessed that I live in a place like Santa Fe where I've got access to all these different stores. A lot of our people around the world and around New Mexico, specifically in our little corner of the world, they don't have that kind of access, right? So I'm extra blessed that I live in a city that I have access to all these different grocery stores. And I have certain products that I like at each store. And I'd rather just go to one store and keep it simple, but it's like there's certain things I like at the Co-op and at Trader Joe's and at Natural Grocers and at Whole Foods and at Sprouts. So I go to like 5 different stores. I don't go to them all every week. It'll be like once or twice a month. I'll kind of sprinkle my way around. And
Me
so
too.
I happened upon Whole Foods, and I found that Banza, that makes gluten-free, it's chickpea, right? It's garbanzo bean. They use chickpea flour to make gluten-free pasta. And I realized, oh, wow, I didn't know this until Whole Foods carried it. And it was like Whole Foods has gluten-free pizza crust that's made, by Banza. And so the cool thing about that is not only because I'm just on a gluten-free diet because, just through a ton of trial and error, I know I'm not celiac, right? But I know that I'm gluten intolerant to some degree. I just don't digest wheat well. I don't digest gluten-containing grains well. So I've cut them out of my diet. And so I have to eat gluten-free products. And so it's like, oh, wow, this is really cool. Not only is it gluten-free, but it's high in protein because it's made with beans, right? And you and I, we've already talked at length in this podcast. I said I'd be the bean, or I'd choose the bean as one of my favorite foods, or as a food that represents me, because they're just powerhouses. They're awesome. And so, wow, cool, a pizza crust made with beans, right? So that was really fun. So I started making pizzas with that. I just recently came across, again, I go in waves where I'm like, oh, nutritional yeast is really great because it adds this cheesy flavor. It's a minimally processed food. It's actually pretty high in protein, right? So if you're adding a few tablespoons of nutritional yeast to a recipe, not only are you getting a cheesy flavor and something that isn't adding, it's processed in such a way that you're creating a product through, it's actually, I'm going to forget. I think do they use bacteria or is it a fungal process? It's a yeast process, right? And yeast is a form of fungus. Yeah. So it's like a fungal process that goes on to make nutritional yeast, as far as I'm concerned. I'm just speaking off the top of my head here. And anyway, nutritional yeast is really good. You can, one of my friends makes a product that she calls Nooch for short, where you get the cheesy flavor from nutritional yeast. Again, a minimally processed product that adds a lot of flavor without adding harmful ingredients. These are things that as a registered dietitian, I always look for and I always promote to the public, right? To promote to the people that have curiosities about eating more healthy, because it's like, oh yeah, we want to eat herbs and spices because not only are they tasty, but they have health promoting and nutritional benefits for our bodies, rather than doing what we historically do, in the United States and of course elsewhere around the world. If we're just dumping fat on something, or we're dumping salt on something, or we're dumping sugar on something, we also add flavor, right? Adding fat adds flavor and adds texture, a certain texture and mouthfeel to foods, which is an important part of the culinary experience. We want food to taste good. Otherwise, most humans aren't going to just continue to eat food just because it's healthy that they don't like, right? People aren't going to do that. We want to love the food that we're eating. But simultaneously, ideally, it's also going to be really good for us. It's just they don't always overlap very well, right? And that's why people reach for McDonald's and Burger King and Taco Bell all the time, because they're addicted to food that's laden with salt, oil, and sugar, right? It's heavily processed and it's laden with just fat and salt and sugar, ingredients that add flavor, but that basically make food less healthy, right? It's like the gold standard, or the thing that we should be thinking more about, is how do I add flavor and also make the food even healthier, right? Herbs and spices, key way to do that. Vinegar, key way to do that, right? Vinegar, when we eat vinegar, it curbs our blood sugar response. So we don't get as much of a blood sugar spike. Also, eating vinegar is known that we get a slight little spike in terms of our calorie burning. So it's actually like this little, and it's modest, right? But if you're adding up modest thing after modest thing, we get this little kind of calorie burning effect when we regularly incorporate vinegar into our food. So it can actually help us burn more calories and actually lose more weight. So regularly incorporate vinegar. And it's the same thing as herbs and spices. Vinegars, they're good for our health, but they're adding that tart, sour, acidic forms of flavor to the food without adding ingredients that aren't healthy for our body, like salt, oil, and sugar. So add vinegar, add citrus is similar to vinegar, right? You get that sour, that tart flavor, the bitter flavors that help kind of replace some of that salt-seeking flavor that we all have as human beings, so that we don't have to load so much salt on our food, which of course is the number one risk factor for hypertension, high blood pressure, and hypertension is the number one risk factor for stroke and heart attack, right? So we got to eat less of these things. So nutritional yeast is great. Herbs and spices are great. Citrus is great. Vinegar is great. So I would just tell people, reach for some of these foods in terms of like the ingredient that I look for that add all this flavor while simultaneously boosting the nutrition effect, as opposed to salt, oil, and sugar, which do the opposite.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. I kind of like this format. We talked a lot about different things, covered some tips. So again, thank you for being on the Vegan Pulse, making sense with Gabriel.
Thanks for having me, Nancy. It's always a joy to be here.
Bye.